everyone. Welcome to the Massachusetts General Hospital Frontal Temporal Disorders Unit Community Forum Friday, Session 10, Brain Health at Home during COVID-19. Oh, hold on one moment. Hello, everyone. This is the exciting part about live webinars during COVID-19. I will share with all of you that I'm having a small problem with my fire alarm system this morning, but that just adds to the importance of our topic. And I'm thrilled to be here today with Dr. Bonnie Wong. Dr. Wong is the director of the neuropsychology program in the MGH FTD unit. She is a board-certified neuropsychologist with over 20 years of clinical experience working with adults affected by a range of neurologic conditions. She has developed and directed programs focused on maintaining brain health. Oh my goodness. Dr. Wong, I am thrilled to have you here today as a colleague and a friend, and I'm going to turn this webinar over to you for the moment.
Participants today, a special shout out to those special people out in Holden, Missouri. So hello and thank you for joining us from so far away. I'm so glad you can actually join us from out in Missouri, and I'm hoping that we can all get into a very interesting conversation today about this topic related to how we can maintain our brains and our bodies really during this time of COVID. It's been a little bit of a challenge for everyone, and with all the conversations that we've been having about what life looks like right now, we thought it might be interesting to go back to the topic of how do we actually help ourselves stay with it and try to create normalcy in our lives and continue to do the things that we were doing previous to COVID. How do we continue those activities, and how, especially when it comes to maintaining our brains and bodies in the healthiest way possible while we're in this lockdown situation or quarantine situation. So I thought it would be helpful for us to think about this as what are the ingredients? What are the pieces that we actually need to help maintain ourselves? A lot of people, I don't know if you've all seen this, but people have been coming up with recipes from the era of COVID-19. And I thought, well, you know, recipes and coming up with that recipe book seems like a really good idea right now. And I was thinking, well, do we have what it takes? Do we have the ingredients at home for this recipe for our brain health? And I thought it would be nice for us to actually discuss that a little bit in more detail. I'm just going to share my screen with you all so you can get a sense for some of the things that I will be talking about. It's always nice to have a visual. So, brain health at home. And I thought it might be helpful for us to actually start off by talking about, well, what are the ingredients, regardless of whether or not we're at home or outside and living our usual lives? What are those special pieces? And I try to think about this as something, the best way to think about it, I think, is whatever is good for your body is usually good for your brain. I often think of the fact that people try to separate the two. And in fact, really, you can't do that. Your brain is connected to your body. Your brain has a number of centers and control areas that are connected to the rest of your body. So if you're taking care of your body and your general physical health, it will actually have a positive impact on your brain. And vice versa. Your brain is functioning well, it will help support the rest of your body's abilities to function in daily life. When we think about all of the things that actually come into play in terms of how it impacts our brain health, we want to think about what is a healthy brain? What does that actually mean? Does it mean that it's simply just functioning the way it's supposed to? Well, it turns out in this area, in this arena, really, we think about a healthy brain as being something called a plastic brain. Some of you probably heard of this idea of neuroplasticity. And one thing I'd like to think about with plasticity is when something's plastic, it means it's a little bit malleable, it's adaptable. And that's what we want to think about in terms of a healthy brain, is that it's plastic, meaning that it is adaptable, it can mold and respond to things that we can't control, and adapt to in a positive way to those things that are out of our control, such as things that are in the environment. How well are our brains and bodies reacting to our immediate environment right now? How well we respond to things like viruses, for example, or injuries. How well are we able to adjust when things like genetics are a fixed item and we can't actually have too much of an impact on that trajectory and how genes play out? So how do we get a plastic brain? How do we improve neuroplasticity? It turns out there are a number of things we can do. So there are things that you probably already know to be important, to be useful. And I figured we could actually touch upon those very briefly and then talk about, well, how do we actually do all of this when we're at home? Okay, so the first most important ingredient, I think, for a healthy plastic brain is exercise. And you'll see in the New York Times, in all sorts of publications and on the news, the one area which we've had the most convincing research that this activity can actually help our brains function is exercise. Cardiovascular activities, things that get your heart rate up a little bit, things that actually, get your heart pumping and your pulse up a little bit in a safe range. That seems to be particularly helpful. Some studies have even found that certain types of moderate cardiovascular activities can potentially help your brain grow new cells, which is something we would not have thought of 20 years ago. The old way of thinking was that we were born with all the cells we're ever going to have, and that would be it. But it turns out that we're constantly producing new brain cells, and exercise may actually help support the production of those factors that promote more cell growth. There's some indication that strength training may also be very important. And also, again, it might help our brains produce more in the way of those nerve growth factors and new cells. But in general, when you look at the studies, and now there are more studies looking at the impact of moderate exercise, even in people who are starting to show some cognitive problems, may have some, at the stage of what they called mild cognitive impairment, having some regular exercise routine may actually change that trajectory of decline, such that people may not decline as quickly as they could have had they not started some exercise routine and maintained some level of physical health. So I always encourage people, if there's one thing that you want to do for your brain that's also good for your body, and it's something that really, it's an open definition what we mean by exercise. You want to do exercise. Right now, the exercise that we can do might be a little bit limited since we're at home, but we can talk about all the creative ways one can do this. My favorite activity, as some of you know, is related to music and in particular dance. Dance is such a fantastic way of being able to engage our brains and our bodies, because if you think about it, with dancing, you need to keep track of the music. You need to figure out if you're moving with the music and if you're learning certain steps, right? That's also challenging your memory to learn the steps and how to actually coordinate your body. But overall, the idea is that you're moving. And you'd be surprised if you just started moving around in your living room and started dancing to your favorite tunes, how you start to get your heart rate up. You break a little bit of a sweat depending on the type of music you like. But more and more people are finding that dance is a perfect way to exercise your body and actually exercise your cognitive skills, all of those thinking skills. So I always encourage people to just start dancing and dance like nobody's watching, because right now nobody's watching. You're at home. So go for it and do whatever type of dance you can and not have to worry about what that even looks like, as long as it feels good and it feels safe to you. Sleep is such an important one. We always talk about getting the right amount of sleep, staying on a good sleep schedule. It's important for so many ways of thinking in terms of how alert we can be, how attentive we are. You just think about the times in our lives when we may have had a bad night's sleep. Or something disrupted our sleep in a particular way, or if we're traveling and we're crossing time zones. Anytime you have a little bit of a disruption in your sleep, it actually can have a significant impact on how well you can think and how clearly you can think. So I always encourage patients when I work with them to make sure that they're practicing what we call good sleep hygiene. It sounds like a little piglet running around in the mud when we talk about sleep hygiene, but essentially the idea is that you want to make sure that you're on a regular schedule. The environment is just right, that it's not going to disrupt your sleep throughout the night. Turns out there are more and more studies that are looking at the quality of sleep and the architecture of sleep, how we go through different phases of sleep throughout the night, how that might actually be important for clearing out some proteins that may lead to negative changes, it just have a bad impact on our brain functioning. There may be a time during our sleep where our brain does a little housekeeping and is able to get rid of some of those bad proteins that can lead to things like Alzheimer's. So we want to make sure that you're getting good sleep. During sleep, that's when we're consolidating memories. And our brain is doing a lot of, again, that housekeeping and trying to make things connect better and get rid of things that we don't need. So sleep is an important one. And of course, if you don't get good sleep, that can impact your physical health. So as you can see, it's all connected. Sometimes when you're not sleeping well, that can lead to things like hypertension, high blood pressure, and other metabolic problems in the body. So you want to make sure that the sleep is under control and you're getting good quality sleep. You wake up in the morning, you feel refreshed. Sometimes people use that as a marker of whether or not you're getting good sleep. You can wake up automatically without needing an alarm clock. So something to keep in mind. Okay, and sleep is something we can definitely do right now while we're at home, maybe a little bit too much. So it's going to take a bit of work to maintain that kind of healthy sleep style and sleep schedule during the time of COVID. Nutrition and diet is a big one. This is hard to study, but generally the research suggests that any type of heart-healthy Mediterranean diet is a good one for the brain. Usually the studies that show a positive connection between diet and brain health are those that look at a Mediterranean diet: fish, olive oil, nuts, fruits, and vegetables. So that is something you want to definitely focus on. Diet's a hard one to maintain right now. Now that we're at home, I can tell you that, if you're in close proximity to the kitchen, as I am, it's very easy to start eating in the way that you may not have prior to being at home during the pandemic. So it's just something to be mindful of. And, I would say take this as an opportunity to start experimenting a little. If you are at home and you're looking for new activities, there are so many new cookbooks out there during the time of pandemic of how do we actually maintain a heart-healthy Mediterranean diet at home. Try some new recipes. Get creative. If you can't go out to the store all the time to get all of that, fresh fish, is it a certain type of tuna fish that we can think about? Sardines that you can get delivered. So it's a time to get creative with that recipe book. Mental stimulation is another component to this. We always talk about, think about what you do for your body. If you don't challenge your body in a particular way, well, you might lose a little bit of muscle tone. You might notice a different shapes and changes in your body. It's the same thing with our brains. If you don't continue to stimulate it in a particular way, that you kind of get into a rut. And the way the brain works is we make new connections and we change connections in our brains through activity and through exposure to new ideas, new things that we can do physically, mentally. So while we're at home, here's a perfect opportunity for us to stimulate our brains in a different way. Even the slightest shifts will make you pay attention to yourself in a different way and start working on new skills. Going from brushing your teeth with your right hand to your left hand, seeing how that feels, doing some of your chores in a different way, getting creative with how you're actually doing your chores. Can you actually add a new level to it where you're going to compete with your kids to see how quickly you can actually clean up a room, or how creatively they can find new ways to rearrange their rooms and set it up for playtime. So there are a lot of different ways in which you can find that new stimulation. Now there's so many new opportunities also for online classes. What I keep trying to find the silver lining in our situation right now, but because of access to the internet, we can connect to so many different classes available to us from around the world. It's not just about going down the street and going to our local yoga studio, dance studio, gyms. We can access all sorts of dance classes, yoga classes being taught by amazing instructors online, no matter where in the world they are. So this is an opportunity in my mind to start picking up new things that you've said previously. Oh, I wish I had learned how to do some simple yoga, or how to meditate, or how to learn, a basic box step. If you look online right now, I'm sure you can find a class for it, and you can join and potentially meet some new people. That's always a great way to stimulate your thinking and stay connected. As I mentioned, there's a lot of research going on right now looking at certain physical activities. Tai Chi, which is another form of very meditative physical activity, very slow movements. There are now Tai Chi courses that you can start to take. They're either on videos, pre-recorded videos. If you find the right studio, a lot of community centers are now going online. So you can learn some simple Tai Chi, which in my mind, when I look at what happens during Tai Chi, it's almost like a slow form of dance, where you have to actually think about what the activity is. You have to be able to remember all the different movements and the sequence of movements, and to connect the movements in a particular flow and in a particular way. So I always encourage people to look into some of those classes, especially since there are now an increasing number of studies that look at the benefits of incorporating something like Tai Chi into your daily activities. That can actually not only result in improvements in physical health, they look at core strength and your body strength, but also turns out it could help you with that, what we call multitasking, that mental flexibility of being able to juggle multiple things at once. So I always encourage people to look into such meditative activities as Tai Chi, yoga. There are a lot of yoga classes out there online that can be done live. I think my husband is doing one right now live from my bedroom. I always encourage people to find those things. And of course, the love of my life is related to music-based activities. We think of music activities as only one thing. Either you play an instrument or you know how to dance in a particular way. And I would say that we need to think outside the box right now. And it's not just about knowing how to play an instrument, but maybe it's about learning how to play a new instrument. Again, a lot of online courses cropping up all over the place, teaching beginners how to actually start playing your ukulele, or learning a simple box step with your partner. I love those online dance courses for partner dance, ballroom dancing, because this allows you to get that extra mental stimulation and socialization with the people you're at home with right now, while trying to learn how to coordinate with one another. It's an amazing thing to see how hard it is to not step on one another's toes, both literally and figuratively. So I always encourage people to pick up dancing in whatever form it is. And again, dance like nobody's watching, because nobody is watching right now. It's just you at home. Other music-based activities, singing, learning how to sing. Again, I've seen so many new classes online teaching the basics related to singing or whatever instrument it is. I also find that when it comes to music, there's so much research now that talks about the impact music has not only on mood and stress management, but actually engaging in the music helps our brain make connections in different ways. And also is a way to stimulate our brains and focus our attention in a particular way. Right now, places like the Met Opera, Carnegie Hall, the New England Conservatory, they're all holding online live streaming of performances every night, either previously exhibited performances. The Met Opera is streaming some of their fantastic operas every night. They have this streaming of operas every night. But a lot of people are doing live concerts online for free. So I encourage people to look at those websites for their local institutions. This is the case also for many of the museums, the Metropolitan Museum, the MFA. So many of them are offering not only virtual tours of their artistic collections, but some of them also have live performances for people who often will throw concerts in those venues. So I encourage people to look for those. Writing and journaling is another one that I think is really a helpful way to engage our brains in a particular way. When we write, when we journal, when we think about what happened during the day today, that's engaging your memory systems, and that's forcing you to really repeat and train your brain to engage memory in a particular way and use your language in a particular way. Even now, I feel as though if we're all engaging with all of our friends, family, loved ones by email, writing that email and constructing it is a perfect way to actually, again, train your brain and keep active in a particular way. Socialization, that's a huge one. It's through socialization that we get all the mental stimulation we're talking about, the help with managing our mood and our stress. And it involves using our verbal skills, finding the words, finding the memories, trying to engage in real time in a particular activity. I think socialization is one of the best ways we can actually exercise our brains, and we can do that certainly right now through web-based platforms. I'm sure many of you have found that you're connecting with people that you wouldn't have connected with previous to the pandemic, certainly not as frequently, but now there's an opportunity to do that. And you know, you'd be amazed to see how it does a heart good and does a body good to be able to connect with people much more often than you had in the past. And we're talking about just in general, it's a stressful time right now. What's next? Where are we going to be going? How are we going to be getting out and moving on with our lives? How do we manage this? You know, we're in a bit of a crisis right now with the world being what it is. And how do we manage our mood? How do we manage our stress so that we can build our resilience and push forward? Well, through a lot of the activities that we just talked about, with exercise, with meditative practices, connecting with people, sharing with people all the time, mentally engaging. All of these activities are helping us maintain our brains plastic, building that plasticity. Some people like to talk about how building that plasticity is a way of building resilience to all the negative things that could possibly happen to our brains, building resilience against the things that we have no control over right now. So let's think about how we can actually continue to keep all these pieces, maintain them right now in the time of COVID and being at home. And then finding purpose and meaning. I think this is a particularly important piece of the puzzle. It's not just about doing the activities for the sake of doing the activities, but really finding a reason to do it. When we are connecting with people, what do we get out of it, and what does it mean for us? Does it allow us to engage with others in a particular way? Are we able to offer support for somebody else? It's an amazing feeling to realize that you can contribute to somebody else in a time of need. And that to me is something quite meaningful. And it gives me purpose when I wake up every morning. We need to have a reason to wake up every morning, and we need to find those. It's not an easy thing to find. We have to work pretty hard at it. It's not something that just pops up one day, but really thinking sometimes, you know, what is it that I want to do? That will bring that you know, moment of joy, that spark of joy for me for that day, or that feeling of connection, and I've contributed to somebody's life. And it can be anybody or anything, any situation. You could, you know, donate your time in a particular way online if that is something of interest. So this is a hard one, but I think once you actually find what purpose and meaning is in all of those activities that you're doing, it'll also keep you motivated to stay in the game, and to really keep pushing and making use of all these little pieces and ingredients that we're talking about here. Katie, welcome back. You look like you're in better circumstances. Nope, can't hear you. You're still muted, Katie.
Dr. Wong, I really want to thank you for taking over this webinar and being such an amazing plastic neurologic champion. And what you were just talking about, the purpose of feeling that you have a purpose, I would also add the importance of connections.
Absolutely.
Just this morning, what a great example of it takes a village, right? So you and I are in this together, and when I faltered, you were right there to pick up for me. And I think that we all need that right now, right?
Absolutely, even more so, right? It's when the challenges arise that we need each other the most. But when we can be there for one another, it's an amazing feeling. It's something that it can be incredibly rewarding, and I think it motivates us to do more in some way. So. I hope I haven't been boring people by going through this discussion here as we're going along. I know we were going to have a chat. I can just finish up by essentially asking the question. So after I've gone through all the ingredients that we often think about for maintaining your brain health, my question to you all is, do you have the ingredients for maintaining your brain health at home? What is in your pantry? And I would say, you know, we've touched upon this as I've been talking, but I think we do have the pieces. It's about getting a little creative and making use of what's available to us right now. You know, I've been collecting ideas. I facilitate other support groups, and I've been collecting ideas from patients and their family members. What are they doing right now in the time of COVID to help them maintain themselves in a particular way, to maintain their physical health and their mental health? And it's been essentially anything they could get their hands on at home, right? This is always what I think people say is a sign of a good cook, is if you can make do and you can do something with the ingredients that you have at home. So for some people, they are getting their physical work now that the weather's better here, at least in New England. Gardening, yard work, right? It's a lot of physical activity. It's a lot of planning. You're outdoors, you know, doing their chores in a particular way. Really getting into that, you know, cleaning that floor and vacuuming. I have to turn it into a little bit of a competition in order for me to get myself into the house chore activity. And it takes a lot of negotiation on my part with my husband to try to figure out who's going to do what. And it's a little bit of game theory there. So there are things that you can do at home that are a little bit different than you would have normally. Doing double duty with your indoor activities, essentially, right? And you know, I'd mentioned early on, there are so many online classes now, you know, that are streaming live. You know, I think, as I mentioned, my husband is taking a yoga class right now with some of his favorite teachers who are based out of state. And so, you know, I noticed some of my patients have been talking about the Facebook groups. Silver Sneakers is one of their favorites, where they have these live stream and they record them afterwards for people to go back to. Live streaming live yoga classes, seated yoga classes, gentle yoga classes, Tai Chi classes, and then some that are more related to strength training, you know, with cans of soup at home, and using the blankets and pillows that you have around. People are getting very creative, and I encourage people to actually look at that. And I keep coming back to this dance, dance, dance. That type of movement and activity is going to get your body moving. It's going to get you thinking and listening to music and paying attention and looking at how you're coordinating your body. And if you can dance with a partner, it's even more fun. The Metropolitan Opera, as I'd mentioned, they have this nightly opera stream. All of these places are getting really creative and trying to stay connected with the rest of the world, because we all know how important it is to stay connected in whatever way possible. And music seems to be the universal way that people seem able to engage. You don't necessarily need to physically be there, but you can connect and sense the music. As you know, certain types of music connect for some better than others, but music is a universal language. And I always want people to be able to engage through music in whatever way they can. Sing, as if you're in the shower, but sing in the kitchen, because now you can, and you don't have to run the risk of being embarrassed or offending anyone. Nobody's noticing. So go nuts with that is what I encourage people to do. Just a very quick couple of videos I wanted to share with people to show how creative they've been getting with their at-home activities. A lot of fun with this. You don't need to hear it, but you can actually see what's going on. This is, let's see, an individual who decided, this has gone viral now, but who's decided that he's going to put soap on his kitchen floor and watch what he does with his slippery floor. Katie, can you see that? He's turning it into his treadmill. And this is how he's actually learning to exercise and maintain his physical activity in this tiny, 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 tiny little space. It's really hysterical to see how people are doing that. Now he's increasing the speed of his treadmill, as you can see, by making it a little bit more slippery. It's almost getting a little dangerous for him. So, people are getting very creative with things like that. I wanted to show yet another creative one. This is a fellow who is a salsa dancer. And as you can see, he is practicing his steps with himself in the mirror as his partner. Katie, I hope you can see this. Are you able to see this?
I can, and it's so cute. I think the thing that comes through the most, Dr. Wong, is the passion. Right?
Yep.
And that people they have energy and they're being creative.
Exactly.
It's not just that we're being asked to stay home and sit on the couch. We're asked to stay home, but fully encouraged to use our creativity and the resources available to us.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I hope that was okay that I went through that whole series of ingredients, but I'm hoping that I was able to show that people have a lot of creativity and they're good cooks. They, in the sense that they can figure out how to make their usual recipes with what they have at home. And there's a lot that you can add to your COVID-19 at home brain health cookbook. With all of the new activities. And what I've been encouraging people to do is to actually contribute their ideas so that we can create this collective book that, well, if you think about it, we're improvising now, we're getting creative, but all of this will still be useful to us even after, once we get onto the other side of this pandemic. For those of us who live in areas where we can get hit by snow and we're stuck at home for days on end, well, now you can go to your cookbook and you find all those activities that you created for yourself to do at home, and you can do that while you're snowed in. Or if it's 110 degrees outdoors and it's not safe to go outside, what can you do at home? You're actually preparing for all of those eventualities that have been happening all our lives, but we never thought about having to get creative like this. And so the goal here is just to think about all the different ways we can be brain healthy and body healthy at a time like this.
I think that the gift of pandemic for caregivers has really been what you just said, Dr. Wong, right? It's that permission that just because maybe you can't live your schedule or your day-to-day the way you used to, it doesn't mean that it's not valuable and that it doesn't have purpose or impact. So many caregivers have expressed to me that life in pandemic is not a whole lot different from their life as a caregiver. But I think that now the whole community has really been giving them more ideas, more tools, more inspiration. Now there's a plane. So I really am inspired by our session today because I think that a lot of the things that people talk about, of course, in the news, there are many challenging things that we hear, right? Things that we're not able to do. But to have a whole presentation about ways that we can support something positively, ways we can take action, I think that empowers folks to feel like, oh, there is something I can do.
Yeah, and I've just been overwhelmed. I mean, the whole situation we're in right now, Katie, is overwhelming, right? And it can be incredibly distressing. We just don't know what's happening from day to day. But I am struck also by the overwhelming positive outpouring of connection and desire of the community to support one another and to help them think of creative ways to maintain themselves. I wanted to show this other video of, I think this was in Italy during the height of their crisis, where two young women decided they needed to be physical. And so they were playing tennis with one another across rooftops. So they were each on their respective rooftops in their buildings, and they were able to maintain this amazing volley across the roofs of these buildings. They didn't lose the ball. They didn't run off the roof, or not that I saw at least. Hopefully they didn't. You know, and it wasn't clear that they actually knew each other very well. It was somehow they connected, and then they were able to start up this game on their roof. While maintaining social distance. So people are amazing. They get creative and they come out and start singing to one another from their balconies, their rooftops. That's, if we can use the word contagious right now, because I'm seeing a lot of people in their communities coming out in the evenings, singing, sharing with their neighbors, maybe people they never would have really connected with previously. They're now all getting together every evening on their decks when they can face one another and learning about one another and maintaining that socialization that we all desperately need. And so, again, I think after the pandemic, there's this new relationship now that they can actually rely on. Right. It's really quite touching for me to see all of this.
I love the idea that resilience is contagious. Right.
Yeah.
And again, just thinking about the importance of hope and connection and the ability to look towards the future and actually say, I want to take some of the things that I built or learned in pandemic to the rest of my life. I think that really can give folks a different mindset as they're living in it today.
Yeah, it's very future and forward thinking, right? I'm preparing so that when there's the weather's not great outside and I can't go out for my usual jog or walk or gardening, here's what I can do. Now I'm fully equipped. I have even more tools I can rely on. This is the way forward is the only way we can actually be right now.
Yeah, I think the other thing is too, there have been days where it's felt difficult, right? Or even just, oh, time to get out of bed again. And I think that the encouragement that maybe a small step, doing one thing could light a little spark to make you do a second thing that would be good for yourself or your loved ones in your home. And then that could keep building. And so really just trying to be tender with yourself and gentle. And that really a great driver for all this inspiration is what brings you joy. You can start there.
Right. I think of it also as getting over the speed bump. I find that once we get over that speed bump, we can continue and maintain momentum. And that's what it sounds like we're talking about, getting up again today and trying to figure out how to move forward. If you have that one little activity that you have to do, that you scheduled for yourself, kind of gets you moving. And then once you actually get moving, other things seem possible again. So it's trying to figure out what that goal is on the other side of the speed bump. And once you can get over it, it can take you until you get to the next speed bump.
Right. And that rhythm, I think that also sounds a little bit to me like schedule, right? Like what's our new you think of momentum, rhythm, schedule that, we need to accept a little bit. You might have already used this term, Dr. Wong, but the idea that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so to just kind of embrace that a little bit, like, okay, I gotta say that this is my new normal, and how will my schedule look? What will the rhythm of my days look like?
Right.
For what works for you.
Right. And it doesn't have to be always the same, right? Like with any good piece of music, there's some rhythm to it, but then there are occasional changes that is just part of the overall piece of music, right? The other thing about having that schedule and structure, it gives us the ability to it gives us an anchor in particular ways that I think is really helpful. When right now, my metaphor is that everything feels as though we're at sea. We've lost that structure, and structure feels good. It's comforting, and sometimes it takes the burden off of us. But I like that idea, Katie, that people, create some sort of schedule for themselves, a routine. Rhythm, I want to go back to the analogy that you brought up about the marathon, right? It's a little bit of a long haul, not there is an end to it. I think about, and I love this analogy, when people are doing things that feel like they might be hard to get through. What is often something that helps get through it? People who are working in jobs out in rice fields, historically, or by the riverside, or in the army, they start chanting and singing together. Okay, they come up with songs that even to this day, will still keep singing, right? When they're in boot camp and they have to do that 20-mile run together at 5 a.m., they start singing songs together so that they're in rhythm. And the rhythm and singing helps them get to the next point, right? So I like the idea when people can do things together, structure things together, and be in sync in a particular way, it can help you get through that difficult time.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I heard you before just talk about the connective power of music, and I think you're just highlighting it here, and it makes me feel overwhelmed and with hope when I think about like a group of folks chanting and cheering or singing together. And it's been lovely to see the ways that people have created that in a virtual space, and that even hearing someone perform over a webinar can be moving.
Yeah. Now, Katie, I know you're in a little bit of it's beautiful outside, but there are people who are putting up questions in chats and wanted to do, how would you like to handle that? Because I want to make sure that we can address whatever it is that's coming up.
Yeah, I think that we addressed them. I was able to see the chats, and that really the biggest thing was about people being able to take the information that you're presented and to make it individual to them and really have that flexibility. That was the main question that was asked. And so, yes, I think that that we've been responsive. We have such a wonderful community of caregivers and community supporters and persons living with a diagnosis. And I think that they're really hungry for this type of information because they want to do things to support their own brains, the brains of their loved ones, and just really to embrace that they can have a high quality of life. I always say, just because a diagnosis has come into your life doesn't mean that joy has to go out. And I love the idea that we can make new memories of joy, whatever the background of our circumstances are.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's a really beautiful way of putting it. And thank you, Katie, for always helping remind us, even in our most difficult times. I think sometimes we get lost in all the chaos of the world, and it's always helpful to have that message come through, and in such a genuine way from you, Katie. So I really appreciate you sharing this message. And and you're connecting everyone. You're doing this every week, so applause to you. If I knew how to put up an applause emoji on my screen, I would do it right now. But
well, it's really funny, right? Because many people know that I have a personal connection to the community as I've walked the walk of an FTD caregiver, and I'm currently an Alzheimer's caregiver as well. But I find it funny that what has happened today during our webinar, right? So we've had a lot of little hurdles. It seems like we've been able to come back and pick up some momentum at the end, and we had to be creative. This is my first webinar where I'm standing in a yard. Thank goodness for iPhone. But really, it's just this idea that you don't have to give up, right? If you can't do something the way that you used to, look around. What do you have in your pantry? Mm-hmm. And what can you put together to make it still work? And I know that, I'm going to remember this with positivity, because it feels good, actually, when the world throws obstacles in my way and I can say, oh, guess what? I'm going to find a way around that obstacle.
You love a challenge, Katie.
I love a challenge.
And you always manage to conquer them. Just look at you right now.
Yeah, well, we're just, I think that's what brings, those are the interesting parts of life, right? And help us to be genuine and really connect with one another. Because I think that life is challenging in many different ways for people, right? And those really seem to be the things that I connect with people over. When they tell me about like an amazing trip they had or something that went effortless, that's nice. I'm happy for them. But I like to hear the stories of grit and perseverance. That's what really, makes me fall in love with someone.
Then you're falling in love with everybody who's on this forum right now.
Yeah, it's just a love bubble for me in pandemic. Dr. Wong, am I able to ask if there is anything else in your presentation today that you wanted to share with us? Anything as a finale?
As a finale, oh, well, since I keep pushing this whole music thing as something that would be a great way for us to engage and stay connected, I thought, well, I need to practice what I preach a little bit here. And just to share with you all, I had been a piano player for a number of years. Unfortunately, I had to live without my piano for about 5 years now for various reasons, but she's back in my home. Yes, it's a she. She has a name. And I thought maybe if you can tolerate it with all its little bubbles here and there, maybe I could end today's session with a little piece of music that I've been trying to revive. Would that be of interest?
We would love that. We would be honored if you
okay.
Today.
All right. I think some of you will recognize this piece, but Katie or anybody else, feel free to yell out if the sound is a little bit off. Let's see how this goes. I'm hoping the sound
we will definitely do that. And while you're settling yourself, Dr. Wong, I will remind everyone that Community Forum Fridays are all posted on our MGH FTD YouTube channel. So if you're on YouTube, you can just put in the search bar, MGH FTD unit, and we will have our education day posted there as well. And take it away, Dr. Wong.
Okay. For those of you who know this piece, be kind to me because I know I'm going to make mistakes, but hopefully it'll come out all right. And if it sounds really terrible, I'm just going to blame the sound quality of my computer rather than my playing, okay?
Bravo, bravo. Oh, Bonnie, Dr. Wong, you know, the sun is so warm today, but you gave me chills. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for allowing me to share with all of my little blips and fits and starts. Having a great opportunity to actually see what I've been able to relearn. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to exercise my brain.
You're receiving many compliments in the chats from our viewers, and I just want to thank you for sharing not only your professional expertise, but your passion and your creativity and your heart with our community.
It is.
Thank you so much. I think that, oh, and someone has just asked, could you name that piece one more time, what you just played?
Sure. This is actually the second movement from the Beethoven Pathétique. So the Pathétique is a very, very, very famous piece, and it's the Adagio. Okay, so if you look at the Pathétique, you'll hear it's a very dramatic piece. But I thought maybe the second movement, which I just played, would be a nice way for us to actually end today's chat.
I think this has been the most dramatic of the 10 Community Forum Friday sessions. Dr. Wong, thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that you have a beautiful day, and we appreciate you.
And again, thank you, everyone. Stay safe, and a special thank you to Holden, Missouri. You know who you are. Bye-bye.